Welcome everyone to Northwest Digital News. Again, we are live here at Smartsheet ENGAGE 2018. I'm Kevin Hunter and my special guest, George Puziak. And if you would, George, share with people about your company specifically so they know where you're hailing from and what brings you to Bellevue, Washington here today for the Smartsheet ENGAGE.
Going back a little ways, our base of operations has been the Pacific Northwest. Right now we are located in Las Vegas, and it's a long story. We've traveled all over the world and lived in many places. Saudi Arabia for 7 years, former Soviet Union for 14 years, and so on. But that's really apart from what we're doing now. All those years I spent in the engineering construction industry. I've managed some multi-billion-dollar projects, and then I retired about 10 years ago. At that time, my wife and I actually formed 2 consulting firms because we felt there was a need for major medical facilities to have some supporting technology to run their businesses.
Sure.
Fundamentally, we felt that doctors in the United States were very good, but they were not very good business people, and so they needed the software to support it. We found that GE produced a software package that suited us. We became experts at it, and we have been consultants to over 100 different companies, 20 of which are active right now in the application of this software. In the process, as we were teaching the doctors how to use this management software, we literally not just management, it's revenue cycle management, that's the technical name. At the same time, we found that once we taught them how to use it, they neglected to implement it. So we felt that what they needed was a management program that would continue the work after we were gone. And in our search, we decided that Smartsheet was the vehicle that would do that for them. So this is our overall objective, is to reduce the cost of healthcare in the United States. I know it's a major objective, but we feel one company at a time, and maybe we'll get somewhere. If we can introduce this software, Smartsheet, into our 20 current companies, then I think it's a pretty good start. And other people will get the idea that doctors should be doctoring and not managing, business managing. So with that kind of an introduction, I'm hoping that Smartsheet will do the job for them, and it's our objective to introduce it to as many companies as possible.
Sure. Talk just a little bit about your organization. I see your name tag says KPG Revenue Cycle Management Incorporated. Talk about the organization and specifically the service that you provide.
The initial idea came from the fact that my wife built a consulting service within GE that essentially went out and implemented the software that GE produced.
Sure.
So that GE didn't just have to sell it and let the major medical facilities figure out how to use it. They actually were able to send her and her team out to implement it. And at one point I decided financially that she could be collecting essentially 5 times as much as a consultant. So when she retired, we formed a consulting company to implement this software, and we're a preferred vendor for GE. We still have a strong relationship with them. So we continue to implement the software. We teach the doctors the details of how to code the work that they do so that it eventually goes to the insurance companies and they pay for it. Or as usually happens, they refuse to pay for it. So now somebody has to go back and prove to them that the application for payment was correct. And that's another part of our job. And we're very successful at that, and the doctors appreciate it. So that's essentially what we do in that area. And then as an adjunct to that, as I mentioned, we feel that Smartsheet would help them implement this work at the everyday level.
I'm kind of curious because you mentioned that you've been using Smartsheet for 2 years now in your organization. Was there a learning transition or time frame that you could give people a heads up on what they might expect if they're thinking about Smartsheet for their own organization?
Well, in our case, we started using it on a very limited basis for small applications, essentially communicating with our consultants around the country and collecting their input as to what stage of the project that they're managing they were at and what problems they had and so on. So it was just a communications tool. The other elements of managing our company, we used other software. We used Microsoft Project, we used Primavera for scheduling, and Excel for some of the financial work and so on. And so we started implementing it on a small scale, and that was done in 2 or 3 weeks. Not a problem at all. As we became more familiar with it, we realized that it could be extended to replace almost all of the other software that we were using, because our applications aren't as technically demanding as, say, construction. Construction needs a program like Primavera. We don't. Our work is simple. And it's easier to understand, easier to teach, and well within the capability of Smartsheet. So the transition period is still in progress, and now we're implementing more and more of it. But the beginnings of it, just take a little piece off and chew on it, and you've got the start on it. And if it suits you, then continue learning more about it by coming to a conference like this and learning more about it. And in our case, we will be now applying it in a much more serious way.
You mentioned that doctors are great at being doctors, but they aren't great business managers. That's actually true of a lot of people who specialize in a given type of product and or service. They aren't that great at managing their organization. So you come in your organization and you help them create that management system. One of the things that you mentioned that kind of intrigued me is that do you see Smartsheet as one of the ways to help them keep the wheels on the wagon, so to speak, once you pull out or once you're no longer in a consulting capacity?
That's exactly the purpose of it. We're not in business to generate more business for ourselves in the future. What we want to do is set them up on the GE software and then teach them how to keep things going and how to manage themselves, manage their people internally, and get away from the doctors having to be professional managers, but have the systems in place that will manage themselves. So that's the fundamental objective.
Well, very interesting. So a perspective here from you is that Smartsheet helps make that client more self-sufficient beyond the relationship with you. And that's a very interesting thing. We've actually had a chance to visit with a lot of people here today from various walks of life. You even mentioned that you're a adjunct professor in University of Texas? Denver, okay. Very nice. Well, so a lot of interesting folks here at Smartsheet ENGAGE. Special thanks to George Puziak for joining us here on Northwest Digital News. We hope you have a great conference. Runs through tomorrow night. Are you staying for the whole event?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're now into it, lock, stock, and barrel, so we're committed to it.
There you go. Well, special thanks to everyone who joined us here on Twitch TV, on Patreon, on YouTube, and of course the Facebook pages as well here on Northwest Digital News. Again, thanks to George Puziak for joining us here on this broadcast. I'm Kevin Hunter. Until next time, take care.